And then Ann Ehlert is back today to present part 2 of 2, detailing guardianship, transition, employment, and much more. Ann is a certified financial planner who specializes in serving families of the disabled.
Lots of life instructions in regard to how my parents felt about planning for her, how they didn't plan, how they did plan, and also bad information they got, great information they got. But even after her lifetime, I was able to share how they felt about that whole process. Since then, I also have a son with special needs, and I'm now living what my parents lived. And so I became a caregiver of my parents as they became older, a caregiver for my sister in her 30s, and then a caregiver for my son, who is now 33, living independently and needing my support on a regular basis. So I'm in a lot of your shoes, but I will, with that, will say that my mission is your mission, to make sure that your child has a safe, happy, fulfilling life, is whatever. And I speak to so many different families with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, mental illness. And the thing I have learned is that disability doesn't define what we want. It doesn't define our child. What we want is for them to have the best life they can possibly have, and no matter what world we are living in. So that's my mission. And I'm hoping that today we can talk about the important things to be done. Out of that financial need, I learned over time that it's not about that. It's really about understanding government benefits. It's about finding the right schools. It's about finding the right people who are going to support us. And so it became this bigger thing than I ever thought it was going to be. When I thought I opened up a financial planning company, I now have psychologists on staff, financial advisors on staff, and work very closely with attorneys and school advocates around the country. And we are a national firm. Actually, we are in not only in the United States, but we are also working in Canada. I have clients in Italy. I have clients in India. So we have clients all over the world. But US and Canada is very similar in some of the planning that we do. So we do most of our work there. But I also know that our lives are very, very complex. We take it one day at a time, but yet we're supposed to be looking into the future as well. And when I'm working with someone in the financial arena, very few people even have their legal work done. But yet when we look at our families, it is so much even more important, because we are not just planning for until our child's a certain age, we are planning for their lifetime. And so there's so many things to do. I built an 8-step process so that you take one step at a time. If I tell you you need to do 10 or 8 or 6, it's too overwhelming. So my advice is always to families, pick the next most important thing for you. Somebody asked yesterday in the session, if your child's young, where do you start? I always start with step 1, which we're going to talk about. And then you need to say what's most important. In our family, what's most important? For your child, when they're young, it's going to be about finding the right medical assistance and finding the right schools, because that makes the difference. From a financial perspective, it's about you, because you need to make sure that you're okay and financially solvent and financially can provide for your family. And then the next thing I would talk about is legal, because I think there's no guarantee for us, right? And so anything can happen to anybody at any point in time. I certainly learned that through the pandemic, working with families who thought their lives were going to look a certain way and they didn't. And so making sure people sometimes, when I talk about government benefits, and I did yesterday, that's about for most families when your child turns 18. However, if we don't plan when our child's younger and something happens to us, age 18 is a mess, because we have left assets perhaps to our child, and we disqualify from some of the things they really need, and planning becomes very complex. So today we're going to focus on number 3, which is I call filtering the legal options, and what do you need to do and how soon do you need to do it. A lot of this information I'm talking about is also on our website. So I'm in the process of recording a series of short classes. Everything we offer on the website is free. Short classes for each of the things we do, and then several long classes. But if you talking about something like the ABLE account, you say, well, what did she say there? There's 4 classes specifically about the ABLE. And if you, people say, well, what did she say about SSI? There's classes for each of those topics on our website. The other things we have in place is we have a charity. The purpose of our charity is the education. So all of this, we do parent education classes once a month. They're all complimentary through our charity. And but one of the fun things we have created out of our charity and spearheaded is Tales for Life, which is a training program for pups. We hand select puppies for a particular child and train that dog for that child. We train the family as well. And it's about a 2 to 3 year process. But we work closely with the family to raise the funds so that we can do that process. So we do it through our charity. It's very fun. That is my son's pup. He's a golden retriever. My son is developmentally delayed, has mental illness, and is blind. So this dog is not only a therapy pup, but he is also a visually impaired pup. So he can, my son is pretty competent with this dog. Okay, so that's about me. That's why I do what I do. My goal today is to give you an awareness. I'm not going to be able to teach you every single nuance. Somebody yesterday already had emailed me and said, could I send you a copy of my trust? Would you look at it? I said, absolutely. So I'll leave you my email address at the end. Many people have trusts. They're not sure they're right. They're not sure there's things in it that they need. But mostly it's so you take action. If you don't have a trust, or if you have a trust, you're not sure it's right, to look at the things we're talking about today to make sure you have legal documents that are really important for the future. So I always start with step 1. I did this yesterday as well. I always ask 2 questions because I want to frame the day. It is about what is the best thing that can happen for your child and what is your biggest fear? 2 questions. So what's the best thing that could happen? If you answered it yesterday, think about it again, write it down. Because these are the things I always, when I'm working with a family or I'm working with a company, whatever I'm doing, I always use these 2 questions. What is the best thing that can happen? And what is your biggest fear? Okay. Most of the time we're going to say, I just sat through a little bit of the prior presentation about medical research. That's always our biggest wish, I'm sure. But beyond that, because we can fund that and we can help that, and we can, but we don't have a lot of control over it. So I'm going to ask you to think about what's the best thing that you can do and what's the best future for your child besides that we can give them a happy life. Most people will say that they want their child to be happy and safe. And I will say that those are really big, broad wishes. And if we want those things, we have to dig deeper. So I've been hearing that from families for many, many years. And so what I've learned over time is I was doing a presentation with a group of 60 families doing a project to start to think about a residential program. And I brought in some investors and we went around the room and the families all said, well, I want my child to be safe and happy. And the investors basically came back and said, well, how do you measure that? It was a great question, because if we want those things to happen, the work is on us. The work is on us to make sure that all the things we do are done the best we can do them. And then we look and say, well, what's my biggest fear? Our job as parents, we are always going to be advocates. I'll be an advocate for my son until the day I'm not on this planet. And then I have to name somebody else who will be his advocate. If I want those good things to happen and to be avoiding the bad things, my son has meltdowns, serious meltdowns. That's why he's blind, because he shot himself during one of his meltdowns. So how do I my fear is how do I help my son when he has the meltdowns get the resource he needs? And I can't do it from the grave. I can only do it during my lifetime. And so during my fear, I have to start thinking about what are the things that I can do to help avoid those. We all have those different, based upon our disability and our child's needs. We all have some of those. So I have put in place all kinds of people who'll be able to surround him so that if he can't call me on those days, he can call someone. Okay. The other thing we talked about yesterday was the importance of planning. I'm not going to get into the financial stuff, but I'm going to tell you, based on what we talked about yesterday, having certain documents ready when we're talking about legal and going to the attorney is going to ask you financial questions, because before they do the special needs trust for your child, they're going to have to know what to do for you. And based upon how complex your situation is, it could be really simple and it can be very complex. We all have complex planning. We all need special attorneys who do this work. I'm not an attorney. I'm going to talk about how do you find an attorney and what do you have to expect from them. But you can't go to a real estate attorney nobody should be going to a real estate attorney to have their legal work done in regard to estate planning. But when we talk about that, we have to have done our financial planning first, or at least have certain documents. The attorney is going to ask you what your net worth is. Why? They want to understand how complex your situation is in order to advise you. This happens with any estate planning attorney, if they are a special needs attorney or not. But they're going to want to know, how big is your estate? Who owns what? How much life insurance you have, because life insurance makes your estate bigger. The laws are constantly changing and really changing right now in regard to all of this. And so it's really important for the attorney to know which bracket and which kind of documents need to prepare for you. They're also going to ask questions. And if you have this information of what does cash flow look for you, it's going to help the attorney also understand how are you going to be able to fund not just the legal documents you need done, but also how are you going to fund the future for your child, and how are you going to be able to fund the special needs trust? So the attorneys want to know enough about you. If you work personally with an advisor, I always suggest the advisor participate in your meeting with the attorney, because many times financial advisors understand the legalese. And a lot of times I'm interpreting for the client what the attorney is saying, because attorneys get caught up, just like all of us. Sometimes I'll get caught up in financial terms. The client says, well, what are you talking about? And I have to catch myself. So I will do the same thing. And your financial advisor should do that for you, is sit down and say, if the attorney is talking about a joint trust or an individual trust, if you don't know what that means, let the financial advisor be some of the interpreter. They're not, and let them ask the attorney the questions to make it clear for you. The other thing we talk about many times is benefits. And so I want to make sure you understand your benefits. The attorney will want to know that. And we talked about this yesterday. I'm anxious to get into the legal part. So I just want to make sure that you understand those pieces. Okay. And the things that you might want to make sure you understand about health insurance and your Social Security benefits and how that all plays out. A good special needs attorney will also be able to explain some of these things to you as well, the ones who are really excellent. Okay. So if we know out of the benefit process that your child cannot have more than a house, a car, a prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account in their name, but yet when we calculated out what they need, sometimes it can be a big dollar. Somebody asked the question yesterday, because attorneys will give you some advice about what is needed, how much should be in that trust. Okay. It is very different for everybody. It depends upon what kind of medical needs they have and what's covered by insurance. It depended upon what their capabilities are and how much will need to be funded outside of what the government pays for. So the government's going to give a check. Okay. If your child's getting SSI, they're going to get the 794. If they're getting a benefit on your record because you're retired, they might be getting $1,500 a month. If they end up, as you pass away, living in a residential program, those dollars are not kept by your child. Those dollars go to the residential program. So if your child gets Medicaid waiver money and is living in any kind of residential program or any kind of supported program, the funds that they get are turned over to that organization. So if your child needs anything beyond that, the money is coming from you, not from the government. And so when we calculate it, we have a program we've built to say, okay, what is it then that your child's going to need that you're going to have to leave behind of your estate? Understanding that before you sit down with the attorney is a really positive thing. I will tell you, people sometimes say, well, do I really have to spend the legal fees? Yeah, you do. I mean, if you needed a doctor and you had a heart problem and you really didn't have health insurance, you say, well, should I, if I go to the cardiologist, it's going to cost more than if I go to my next door neighbor who happens to be a podiatrist. Can he give me some advice? Attorneys are that different. And so sometimes now for my smaller clients, there's software. It's called Wills and Trusts. And I can help people who's a young couple with no children or maybe one typical child. I can help them online for $300 to $500 get wills and powers of attorney done online with pretty good documents. That's a service from an attorney. However, that service doesn't exist for us who have special needs children. The other thing is people come to me sometimes and say, well, I have a legal service from my company, and so they will let me work with this attorney at a discount. I haven't yet in those groups of attorneys found one that has significant special needs expertise. And so buyer beware, when you're going to use an attorney for this, it is really important that you get the right attorney. Okay. So how are you going to do that? When we quantify what your child needs, and it could be anywhere from extraordinary medical care that you know that the government won't pay for. It might be medicines that the government's never going to pay for. It might be they're capable enough to, need a cell phone or need devices of some type. They might have a relationship with their siblings, and you want the siblings involved in their life. So if the family gets together, they pick up the child and the child goes with them. All of those things are not things funded by the government. So when we put a cash flow together for your child, we can quantify and say, well, if your child's going to live X amount of years, how much money do we have to put aside for our child over and above that? And how do we do it? How would we do that? If the child can only have $2,000 in an ABLE account, how could we ever leave them money? So when I started doing this with my parents, I sat down with my parents back 30 years ago and said, have you provided for Marcia? And you may hear this from some attorneys who don't have the special expertise. So the question I asked my parents was, how are you providing for her? And my father didn't want to talk to me about it. They just, it wasn't a topic. And sometimes money or lack of money may be a reason we don't want to talk to our child, or lack of clarity of what we're even going to do, right? It's not a topic that we want to talk to our other adult children about, or our own siblings, because we don't even know which way to start. So when I asked my dad, he didn't want to talk about it. I asked him over and over for a year. He finally said, fine, we're going to tell you what we did. We have a will. We disinherited Marcia and we left her share to you. And there were 6 of us. My sister also had a twin. Her twin was typical. And I said to my parents, you disinherited her. Why would you do that? Because I didn't know about SSI, and I didn't know the Medicaid rules. And I didn't know that because my sister did live in a residential program for 9 years of her life before she passed away. It was funded by Medicaid money. My parents never could have afforded to private pay that. So it was really important that she did not have money in her name, but they gave it to me. Right? If they passed away, they were leaving it to me. What's wrong with that? I loved her. I was the financial person. I was connected all my childhood and my adulthood till she passed away to her at the hip. I went everywhere. She went everywhere with me. I went everywhere with her. Why was I not the right choice to be the one to hold her money? It was my money. It wasn't her money. If they left it to me, it's my money. Okay. So they left me a moral obligation, but not a legal obligation to use the money for her. That's one. Would I have? Of course they would have. But it's a risk. 2, anytime you put money in somebody else's name, so we're so tempted to do this because we don't have to spend a lot of legal fees, right? But if I put it in, it's in my name and I get sued, the money that's supposed to be for my sister is at risk. What if I'm married and put it in joint tenancy, thinking my husband's a really good guy and he is going to help me take care of my sister if something happens to me, if I'm sick, if I pass away. But then he comes home one day and says, sweetie, I got a new babe, filing for divorce. What happens to some of my sister's money goes to maybe then to my ex and his new wife, right? There's so many reasons that we should not do this. And since there is a way to leave money for our child set aside for their future care over and above what the government pays for, that's all it's for, we should be aware of that and be able to have that availability. So let's talk about it. 8, we don't want to leave money directly to our child. Okay. 2, we don't want to leave it to a sibling, hoping that that sibling will do the right thing. We could leave it to them and maybe they do all the right thing, and then all of a sudden they pass away and they leave it to their children. So there's so many things that could happen, and we don't want to do things with our fingers crossed. I mean, I don't. I know I don't. I'm sure most of you don't. So, and sometimes you say, well, my child's, I'm going to live longer than that. We don't know that. We don't know if we're going to live longer or shorter. Nobody knows, right? There's another kind of trust that sometimes we set aside, which I have done for my other children, My children do not have disabilities, and I've left funds for them in something called a spendthrift support trust. That's typically called a children's trust. And I'm leaving it for them. There are 3 boys, 2 of them are getting their money this way, but it says that they're not going to get all of their funds to them. It's going to be in a trust. It's going to be available to them with a trustee. When they hit the age of 35, they'll get a piece of it. When they hit the age of 40, they'll get more of it. When they're 50, they'll get the rest. Now, I've since changed it to leave it in the trust, and they'll never get total control of it, as I've learned to understand that if I leave money to them in trust, that they might be the trustee, but I'm protecting them from other people, from lawsuits, from a divorce and things like that. But I can't use that trust for my son, Mark. Why? Because if the funds are available to them for anything, without me calling it a special needs trust, their government benefits will be cut back. All right, when the government will count that, and they'll say it's a countable asset. Therefore, Medicaid and SSI does not have to be paid out. All right. So let's talk about a special needs trust and how it works. This trust is called a third-party special needs trust. It is the trust that we have the attorney create, and we have it created so that other people, us or other people, can put money in this trust. So the trust never gets funded with our child's money. So we would never put their SSI or their disability check into a special needs trust. The only money that can go in this is an inheritance that we leave, an inheritance that grandma might leave. It could be inheritance from siblings. And we can also open account in a bank account or an investment account in the name of this trust and save money that way. But the person's money who cannot go in it is our child's money. So anything that ever got our child's name on it cannot go in this. And if it does, it would taint the trust. Okay, important fact. So these are called third-party special needs trusts. Now, discretionary is an important word because it gives the trustee, the people we assign as a trustee, discretion to how this money is used. Okay, they have leverage to decide how it's spent. So it is very, very important. Later on, you're going to hear me talk about the importance of bringing the trustees up to speed on education over time, because they may have that responsibility. Okay, so this trust is spent for our child's supplemental care over and above what the government's going to pay for. So government pays for here, this money is for this. If the government's paying down here, the money is for this. It's basically says it's not for basic support, it's for supplemental care. So there's a couple of components of the trust. The first person is called the grantor. The grantor is the person who's setting it up. They're the person's granting their money into this trust. Anybody else could put money into it once it's set up, but the grantor is the one who creates it. The beneficiary of the trust is our child. Okay, they are called the supplemental beneficiary of the trust. The remainder beneficiaries are whoever we say. So this trust is for if I create it for my son, it's called the Mark Ehlert Special Needs Trust. I am the grantor. I am also the trustee. Okay, I can be the trustee of the trust during my lifetime, but I have to say when I die, who will be the trustee after me? So it can't be my son. It can be my other sons. It could be my sisters. It could be anybody I consider to be financially wise, as well as able to take on this responsibility. I have a whole class I do sometimes on who's the right trustee, because it's a hard decision. Who's going to step up and do all those roles? And we'll talk about what the responsibilities are. So we're going to name the trustee. Then we're also going to name, when our child passes away, who gets it? Because the government never gets any of this money. It's always for over and above what the government pays. But when our child passes away, we can leave it to, so I've got some going to my other boys, I've got money going to my grandchildren, and I've also given some to organizations like this organization that have really made a difference in my child's life. Okay, so there's a lot of research going on that the way my son is impacted. I want to support those organizations as well. So if when my son passes away, I am leaving some money to different places, but I'm also concluding some charities. Not necessary. It's your choice of what you do with that money, just like in your own documents, right? All right. So people have the trouble with the word trust sometimes. Trust sounds like it's a bank. You know, you see trust company. It's not. A trust is paper. It's just like a will. So our will is paper that says what's going to happen when I pass away, where should the money go? Okay. A trust is a document just like that, only it becomes private. So wills are public, and trusts are private. And a trust is just like a book. A special needs trust is like a book. If an attorney gives you a special needs trust and it's 2 pages, be suspect. Okay. It has a lot of rules in it. It has to have reference to Social Security and their rules. It has to have reference to the legal statutes. It has to have reference to Medicaid. Social Security has things called POMs, which are procedure manuals. It references that. It references all the different rules that must be in these documents. The attorneys who do this eat, sleep, and drink this stuff. There's attorneys who have been the gurus who do this, and there's about 5 or 6 of them in the country who are the ones who, when I first started in doing this, it was 1989. The Illinois Special Needs Trust came about in 1990. So when I started doing this, there was predecessors, but the real Special Needs Trust came about in 1991. And they have the rules of the trust have changed over the years, but it's just paper. Okay, that's all a Special Needs Trust is a bunch of paper. Now, who can set it up? Anybody but one person, your child. So sometimes I work with young couples and they really can't afford it. Grandma and grandpa might step in and say, we'll create the special needs trust in our documents and you can piggyback on it. Okay. So if there's many people in a family who want to leave something for the child, one trust is necessary and everybody else can use it. Okay. So you, as a parent, if you're going to set it up, you're going to say, okay, I'm the grantor. I'm going to be the trustee. If I become sick or incompetent, I'm going to name these people to be the trustee. I've had a lot of discussions with clients about who the trustees are going to be. You want them to be financially solvent. You want several levels of people. So if this person can't do it, I want this person. If this person, you can have co-trustees. You can have 2 people together being the co-trustees. A trustee's job, once that account is funded, perhaps it's not, maybe it's empty until you die and that's when the money goes in it. The trustee's job is to make sure the rules are followed, to make sure bills are paid for the child that need to be paid. Their job is to file tax returns. Their job is to choose investment advisors, all of that. So it's a pot of money, and this describes how that money can be spent. So the trustee has to kind of know how this works. I mean, I've had trustees that are giving the child cash out of the account, and then we come back and we find out we've lost Medicaid. We have to go back and correct that situation and refile for Medicaid. We never want that to happen. We want the trustees to be knowledgeable. I've had many families now as they're starting to get older and they're looking that they pick the other children to be the trustees after them, but they're starting to realize how much work it is. And so sometimes we suggest corporate trustees, and not all trust companies do this. Some do, some don't want to do it because they know special needs trusts require extra care. And so we have about 5 trust companies, 2 significant ones that we work with on a regular basis. And even if people name their children, I suggested that after their children, if no, the children can do it, you put a trust company at the back end of your trustees, because you never want you never want some court saying, okay, this will be the trustee. You want to have thought it through when you're picking your trustees. Okay. All right. And then the remainder beneficiaries, you're naming them. So that's the kind of information the attorney is going to ask you about when they're preparing the documents. Usually 1 trust for 1 child. Now I have clients who have 2, 3, 4 children with disabilities. We have 2. Now I usually negotiate with the attorney to not have, if you have 3 children, to have 3 sets of fees, because usually the trusts are pretty close. But a lot of times the trustees, the future trustees, don't know what's necessary like you do. You may have 2 children with special needs and one needs more funds than the other. You will be deciding how to fund those trusts. You can put 2 children in one. The attorney will help you think that through and advise you. Okay. The other thing I want you to remember is the government benefits. They will look at these trusts. Now, the third-party trust is usually not requested when you're doing an SSI application, but sometimes they ask Social Security asking for them. Why? They're looking to see if the trust has proper wording in it. If the trust has money in it already, so you open an account and you're opening it, it must be irrevocable. That means it can't be changed. Okay. Why do they want that? Well, they don't want you having a trust where you say it can do certain things and then you start funding it for your child and your child's getting benefits and you can come in and change the language anywhere you want. Once that trust is, so it might sit empty, but the minute it has money, it should become irrevocable so that your child, it can't be changed. Your child can't get access to the funds. Your child, this works because your child doesn't control it. Someone else controls it. Okay. Now, I'm very cautious about all of this. And so I recognize I have been doing this for 30 years. I recognize that the trust laws have changed. So what if I make my trust irrevocable so it can't be changed? And the government comes along and says, well, you know what? You could do A, B, and C. And then all of a sudden they make the laws that you have to also do D inside this trust. Or something changes. One of the things that's recently changed is ABLE accounts, and we'll talk about them. But ABLE accounts are an account where we can save some money for our child, but only so much a year. But once I pass away, I would like that trust to put money in the ABLE account. It's something we're allowed to do. So ABLE account gives certain kind of access to money and can pay certain things. The ABLE doesn't hold the big pot of money, the trust does. But I might want that trust to put some money in the ABLE every year once I'm gone. That's new. And so this trust has to be irrevocable. But we need language in it that says it's amendable to stay compliant with the law. So if law changes, I, as a trustee or future trustees, can amend it to stay compliant. So something like that would allow the attorney to change it. If you just make it irrevocable with no one, I see the old trusts that say, this is your irrevocable trust, you never can change it. What if the law changes? So I kind of stay up at night sometimes thinking about, is there anything else I could do to make this stuff work perfectly, no matter what changes happen? So that's a really important thing to know. So if you have a trust already, I would look at it and say, is it irrevocable? Does it become irrevocable when money goes in it? Does it have the ability to fund an ABLE account? There's things I look for in that trust. I can look at a trust. I mean, I've seen thousands and thousands of them. I can look at a trust pretty quickly and say, can't do this, or it's a great trust. Or if you tell me a certain attorney did it, I'll know it's right. Okay. You may not know that. So utilize people who might be able to help you to make sure to have confidence. We like to sleep at night, right? We got enough things we're thinking about for our child's capabilities and medical issues and school issues. Let's make sure that the legal documents we do give us some confidence that we have put everything in place. Now, sometimes people say to me, when should I do this? When should I set it up? Because my child's not going to get benefits till they're 18. Can I wait? Can I wait till they're 17 and start doing this? The problem with waiting is you could die or you could become incompetent, right? And so if you do this while your child is 16, 14, 12, 2, you're preparing so that if something happens to you before your child turns 18, you have made sure that anything that goes to your child doesn't go to them. Okay, I'm going to watch the chat box because once in a while I see some questions come up. Do you have a list of credible lawyers who are experts in the area in different states? For me, Iowa. I do. So I will tell you a couple places. First, you can go to the Protect Your Tomorrow's website, and we have a directory there, and it has a list of attorneys by state. You can type in your city, you can type in your zip code. The other thing you can do is you can go to the Special Needs Alliance, which is, so there's a couple of directories of attorneys who do this. The Special Needs Alliance is one. They are the attorneys who are the gurus. They're really have been doing this for a long time. You have to be highly credentialed to do this. They will be a little more on the pricey side. So if you have a complex situation, you definitely want to use them. So this is what's happened in this business over time. Here's attorneys. Here's the list of attorneys. There's 100% is the attorneys, right? About 5%, maybe 2% of all the attorneys are in the Special Needs Alliance, a very small number. They've been around for a long time. They're very deeply credentialed. There's the attorneys on the other end who know nothing, and know nothing about special needs planning. Those attorneys know it, and they will say, send you over here. Then there's the attorneys in the middle, and the attorneys, then there's two more groups. There's the gurus, and then there's the ones who've, over time, have started to do it, and they haven't yet become credentialed, but they're really good. Okay, they'll be probably in the specialneedsplanners.com site, and you can find them. You want to ask the attorney, are you a special needs attorney for elderly or for special needs children? Because there is a difference. If you go to another site called NEHLA, N-E-E-L-A, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, some special needs attorneys are there as well, but those attorneys, some of them special only in elder law, not in special needs planning. So you want to ask them some questions. How many special needs trusts have you done? Have you done first party trusts and third party trusts? And we'll talk about that. Have you ever had a trust declined? Any of you, do you fight for do you go back and talk to Social Security and defend it and change it without extra fees? Those are questions I like to ask. So how deeply embedded are they in that? Now be cautious of the ones, so there's the gurus, they're the ones who are still pretty good. They're not in, they haven't gone to the work of getting credentialed, but they're really good. I work with a lot of them. They're really good. There's the ones who don't know anything and know to refer them. Then there's a group of attorneys who are good estate planning attorneys, but they don't know much of this, but they do their best. So the problem with anything is you don't know what you don't know, right? So you try to do something, ask the attorney how many of these trusts they have done. And when they get into the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, then you've got an attorney who knows it. Just beware. Okay. If you go to our website and you can't find somebody, or you go to all those websites, you can always email me. I will give you my email address at the end. And you can always ask, but we know a lot of attorneys out there and they're not all posted on the sites, but we know the ones almost in every state who are really good. We work across the country. And if we can't find one, we will find one. I've had people in little towns and they say, I can't find anybody. Sometimes you have to go a couple towns out. I can always also go to the attorneys that we work very closely with and say, I've got somebody who's got a child in this particular town. Could you help me find somebody? They will also help me find someone for a client. They're all very giving people and we work together pretty closely. Okay. So this is not something you wait till your child's older, because we never know what's going to happen. I would do it. That would be one of the first things I would do when I left this conference if you don't have a trust. Okay. All right. So let's go to the kind of trust you should set up. Yes, it's a special needs trust. If there's two kinds of trusts, there's trusts that are testamentary trust and there's trusts that are living trusts. What's the difference? A testamentary trust is a trust that's get created when we die. So if I have inside my will and my will says, when I die, create the trust at the time of my death, when does the trust exist? At the time of my death. Okay, I would have passed away. What if grandma dies and wants to leave money to my child? Okay, there is no trust until I die, right? What if they change the laws and I have a trust, I have a will, my will says create the trust, and when I die, by that time, for some reason, they say no more special needs trusts. I don't have a special needs trust. So we don't want the language for creating a special needs trust inside our own will or inside our own trust. I want a standalone special needs trust. I want when I walk out of that attorney's office, I have the book. I might have my will and I might have my own trust, but I have a book that says the Mark Ehlert Special Needs Trust. It'll have your child's name on it. It'll say that it's a special needs trust. Okay. And if the attorney says, I'm just going to put the language inside your will, either walk out the door or they better have a really good reason for doing it. Okay. Because you don't want any ifs. You want this trust to exist no matter what happens. I'm pretty adamant about that. When people come in with those, I say, let's get them fixed. The other reason you want to have it, you want it grandfathered to the law. So if later on they come back and say, no, there's no such thing as a special needs trust. If you have one and you got the book and you signed it, you have one. It's grandfathered to the laws of when it was created. 2, if we're creating it as a parent and my siblings want to leave something, okay, so I've created a trust for my son Mark, his 2 brothers who are now older, they have jobs and they have life insurance on the job and they don't have any children. They have 1 grandchild, but the other son has no children. But he says, Mom, I get 1 times my salary at work. I'd like to leave it to Mark. He can't leave it to Mark, but he could leave it to Mark's trust that I created. Now, if the trust was inside my will, it doesn't exist yet. But if I've actually signed a document and made it a standalone document, the other people can leave their inheritances to that trust. All right, I see a question. I'm going to make sure. Would you consult with any of us when starting the process? Yes, we do consultations all the time. Some people say they want to put us on a retainer for a long process. Some people just say, I want an hour of your time. We work in all of the situations. I'm in Canada. I was told that it was the best to create a testamentary trust in the will. Do you know about that? You wouldn't do that. In Canada, you have what your special needs trusts are called Henson trusts, and they are set up as not testamentary trusts. They are set up as standalone trusts as well. So it's not unusual to get different kinds of advice from people, but I will tell you those attorneys who work in this area don't create them as testamentary trusts. People who don't do it very often might do that. Okay. Some attorneys will say, well, it's cheaper for you if I just put it inside your will. I always try to refer back to a medical condition. If the attorney told you you had two options, an expensive one that would probably work and a less expensive one that might not work, what medical solution would you pick, right? You'd always pick the right one. The price is very high to make a mistake in this situation, because if you do something that's not right, you could lose all Medicaid funding for your child, and that's not exactly what you want. Okay, so let's say the attorney does it right. They create the trust for you, all right? All right. So here we are. I'm going to watch the time because we have a lot to cover, and I think we have enough time. Okay, so I have a trust for my son. How do I get money into it? Okay, it's a document. My will can leave money to it. So my will is going to say, when I pass away, put this money to Mark's Special Needs Trust. It exists because we already created it and I already signed it, so I can have my will or my personal trust leave money to it. I have life insurance. So my life insurance beneficiary can be Mark's trust, okay, because it exists. My retirement account beneficiary could be Mark's trust. Now, many times when we go through the numbers for people and we say, okay, you should leave X amount to your child, and they look at it and they go, I don't really have that much. Life insurance is a vehicle we use often. It's sometimes a one policy on two lives. It's called second to die life insurance. And so I buy a policy for, if I was married, for myself and my husband, it will not pay till we both die, but it's a cheaper way to fund that trust. It's not term insurance. Term insurance is the kind of insurance that you're kind of renting and it's good for 20 years. Well, if you live to 21 years, you have no funding for that trust. It's got to be a permanent type of policy. Okay. That's a very typical way to fund a special needs trust if we're not sure. The other thing, if I look at my situation, I'm a single mom. I've got 3 boys. My boys, they're my stepchildren. I raised them. Their dad is gone. Their mom is gone. So I'm their mom. And one is disabled, and the other 2 they've all had a tough life. I don't want to, it's a struggle to say, how do I fund them? Mark needs more. He's always going to need more. Okay. He just is. And the other 2 are on their feet. They've struggled though, and they've struggled to get on their feet because they had some bio mom that was just into drugs. And so they struggle. And I want them to all, well, my heart says that I want to be equal, but my head says I can't. So how do I do that? So we all have our, how do we do this? Maybe we don't have enough. Maybe we want to take care of, I want to take care of all 3. So what I have done personally is I've said, okay, I'm going to take whatever I have when I pass away, and it's going to go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Mark's share goes to his trust, but I'm going to buy some life insurance to overfund Mark's trust. So I'm spending some money now during my lifetime to make sure he gets that. But when I pass away, I'm being equal. That meets my needs. Everybody's got something different. If you have $2 billion, you can be equal and your child's fine, right? If you have less, you've got to kind of think about, how do I do that? All right. You can also set up accounts. And I didn't used to do this, but now when I'm working with clients often, I will help them open an account now. Why? Because when I pass away, somebody's going to have to know how to put money into these trusts, and they're not going to know how to use them. So I've learned over 30 years that the future people who are going to have this trustee job, I want to make it as easy as I can for them. So I'm actually going to open an account. It's going to be called the Mark Special Needs Trust. I'm going to put money in it. I'm going to have checks ready for it. So if something happens to me, the rest of the money goes in, but I can show someone ahead of time, this is where the checks are. This is how it works. Okay, lots of things we think about. There's another kind of special needs trust I want to touch on. So this one is called a first party special needs trust. It's also called an OBRA 93 trust because that's the law when it came about. It's also called a payback special needs trust, got different names. I call it an oops trust. Oops, somebody made a mistake. Grandma leaves money to my son, Mark. She leaves him $50,000. He loses his Medicaid funding because he has more than $2,000. Oops. So there's another kind of special needs trust called a payback trust. It's also called a first party trust. It's called that because it holds my son's money. So he inherits $50,000. Instead of having him lose his benefits, I can take the $50,000, put it in this payback trust. It's spent for his supplemental care. He keeps his benefits. But when he passes away, the government gets Medicaid, the state gets paid back for Medicaid he got. So they keep track of what a child is getting. And if my son gets Medicaid funding, and he does, that's how his extreme medical bills are paid. That medical bill is accumulated. So if this $50,000 still has grown, and when he passes away, there's some money in it, the state will get the money back before the other heirs will get it. So it's a tool that if somebody inherits money, we can keep that money for them, keep their benefits, but those trusts will have a payback. The other trust we use this for is divorce. So in most states, divorce, child support can be paid for the lifetime of a child with a disability, not just till they're 18 or 22 or through college or whatever, is for the lifetime. So we have these conflicts a lot of time in divorce. And if child support, when it's paid to the mom, let's say the mom is a custodial parent, so dad's paying child support to the mom, and then all of a sudden that child support continues past age 18, it's the child's money. Even though it's paid to the mom, it's the child's money. That money to the child will make them lose their government benefits. So this trust is also one where when we have child support, we get a court order to have the child support paid to this payback trust. Mom can be the trustee, and that will not disqualify the child. So this trust is used for child support as well as for the child's money. Okay. So two kinds of special needs trusts. We covered a lot, but everybody needs the one on the left, third party discretionary special needs trust. The right one is used for mistakes. Sometimes settlements, we get settlements from a lawsuit. They're paid into that account, and child support. It allows the child to keep their government money, but there is a payback to the government. So if I have both, if I leave an inheritance to my son in the third party trust, and somebody else mistakenly leaves him an inheritance and I have to put it into the payback trust, which trust would I leave instructions for to be how the money should be used? I'd want to use the payback trust first, right? Because then there will be, if there's $1 million in this third party trust and 50,000 in the payback trust, and the government paid 40,000, the 40,000 would come from the 50 and the 10 could go to my heirs. The government will never touch the discretionary needs trust. Whatever is left in that trust when my son passes away, that money will go to the organizations or people that trust has. All right. People asked about the attorney. So protectedtomorrows.com, there's a little section, there's a directory. You can go in there, you can find attorneys. You can also from there email me and say, I can't find one close to me, and we will help you. Okay. All right. Those are legal decisions. Let's talk about the other legal decisions you have to make. This is the hardest thing you do. This is the hardest thing you do. Two things. You have to pick not just the trustees for the trust, but you have to pick people who are going to be the care people. Who are the people who are going to be, if something happens to you, in your will, you are going to nominate future guardians and conservators. Okay, it's called, different states call it different things. These are the care people. These are the people who are going to make the medical decisions for your child, government benefits, school issues, those kind of things, all right? Recreation, day programs, care, all their care. This is the hardest decision we make. I have people who go see the attorney because you're gonna tell the people who are the people going to back me up. Okay, who are the people going to back me, not the money person, but me, the caregiver for my son? Who's the person who my son is going to call in the future when he's having a meltdown? Who is that person going to be? Remember, I talked about our fears. This is my fear. I got to pick the right people for this job. I don't know if it's his brothers. Not yet. They're not old enough. So who are the people? My sister, she's a medical professional, probably a good choice. But she might be able to do it for some period of time. And I might, in my will, say, I want my sister Arlene to do it for the next, if something happens to me until she's a certain age. But after that, maybe I want her brothers to do it. Maybe I want to find a corporate guardian who might be able to step in and support him. Okay. So this is the hardest decision we have to make is our child's going to outlive us. Somebody else has to step into our shoes. It's very hard. Okay. What if I pick somebody And do they really understand what I'm asking of them? Have they lived my life enough to know what it is? And that if something happens to me and my sister gets the job, so if I put in my will, it's this, I want my sister, and then after my sister, the two boys, and after the boys, I put that all in there. But I die and my sister gets the job, my will's done. Okay, my will doesn't apply anymore. My sister's will. So once my guardian, if let's my sister gets a job, I got to tell her, if you ever become Mark's guardian, at that point, you got to change your will, because your will then will name the next nominees. So we are not appointing them, we are nominating them. Doesn't mean they have to take the job. So if I put my sister in and then Mark's brothers, my sister at some point says, you know what, I can't do it. Then it would step down to the brothers. But once my sister gets a job, the job's going to last her and she's going to name someone. Do I want to name my sister and her husband? Her husband's a doctor. Are they good choices? What if they get divorced? So all of these kind of things. Should I name the same people as the trustees? Now, for my sister, I was both the trustee for the trust and the guardian. Okay. That was a choice my parents made. But most people don't do both. You know, I was one of those kids who loved responsibility, and I was really connected to my sister. So it made sense. But not all people who are caregivers are also money people. So we're naming two kinds of people. Okay. All right. The other thing you need to think about, so that's putting it in your will. What happens when your child turns 18? Okay. Besides getting government benefits, the other thing we have to think about is when they're 18, they are a legal adult. And so what do we need to do? We need to, do nothing and assume that they have capacity to make decisions, both medical and financial. 2, have them sign documents that they are giving rights to people, but the only way they can do that if they have capacity to do it. Or 3, go to court with medical records to prove that your child needs a guardian. So what you're doing when you are becoming a guardian is you're making your child 17 again, and you're responsible. So it requires a court proceeding. It requires annual reporting, because once the judge appoints me to be my son's guardian, the judge has given me a big job, and I have to make sure that I report to the court of the status of my son. Okay, because I've taken his rights away. So it's my job to make sure that I'm reporting to the court. It's a tough decision when you're picking those people, and for the future as well. And we talked a little bit about dividing the pot. What about other children? How do you decide? So the attorney is going to ask you all these questions. Who's going to be guardians? Who's going to be caregivers? Who's going to be trustees? It's not going with the attorney and letting them pick it. You have to tell the attorney what you want. Attorneys' fees might go up a little higher if you go in totally unprepared. But if you go into the attorney and say, okay, I've been advised, I've been educated, I understand what you're going to be doing, the attorney is going to still have to educate you to some degree, but you go in with a list of, these are the people I'm thinking would be the future caregivers. Here's the people I think would be the future trustees. Here's a corporate trustee I want to put on the back end. This is how I'm going to divide my estate. You go prepared with these questions. The process will go smoother. The attorney will know that, and the apt of them quoting you a fee on the lower side is more possible than if you go in and say, I don't know what I'm doing, I haven't decided this at all. And they know that they're going to have to kind of help you through the process. They might have to chase you to come back, all of those things. Reason I say this is because I go a lot with the clients, or I'm on a conference call with the client to their attorney. When I didn't do that, I would just send them, I'd call them up on how to go, and they wouldn't go back. They didn't want to go back to see the attorney because it's so hard, right? And I can remember the first time I did my documents. I share this because it is sometimes hard because we're making hard decisions. And I was kind of like depressed thinking about it. And when I went to the attorney and came home and I'd made the decisions, it took me a little while to get back into my normal positive self, because it was such hard decisions. So it's not, some of it's harder than others. Okay. So the tools you're going to need to do this. Trust. When you're planning for your child, the trust is a really important document. And this is something you don't wait till they're 18. These are documents you do. The other document I want to share with you quickly is the ABLE account. All right. somebody had a question. I was going to make sure. Can you choose which special needs child support goes into once my daughter is 18, or does it have to go into the OOPS trust? It has to go into the OOPS trust. Anything that could be your child's money must go into the first party trust. That's any, if child support is coming in, you can't go to the third party trust. Okay. It will be considered your child's income, so it must go there. All right. Okay. What is the 529? We talked about it briefly yesterday, but the 529 is a savings program. It was a spinoff from the College 529 Act. And so what it allows us to do is a couple of things. One, it allows tax-free savings for your child. Two, it's money to be used for approved expenses. Just like a college 529 is used for approved, this is used for approved special needs expenses. However, I will tell you that over time, the law, the 529 rules have been very broad. And so when most of the people who run the 529s, when I ask them a question about can it be used for something, their answer to me is, does it improve the child's life? And that's kind of their criteria. Does it improve the child's life? There is one very distinct thing that an ABLE account can do that a special needs trust cannot do. A special needs trust cannot pay basic support, which is and rent is considered basic support, but the ABLE account can pay rent. So I have that situation with my son. He's in HUD housing. His part of his special needs money is used for rent, but his rent is so high that the place he needed was going to cost more. And so I never could ever help him pay his rent because that would be considered helping him. And if I was providing him support, he would lose some of his benefits. But now I can fund money in the ABLE account, and the ABLE account can pay his rent. It's a great tool for that purpose. Okay. All right. To use the ABLE account, the onset of the disability must have occurred before the age of 26. The child can only have one ABLE account. So if I open one, grandma can also open one. My son can only have one ABLE account. The most you can put in the ABLE account in any 1 year is $15,000. That's the limit per 1 year. So if grandma wants to put in 10, I can only put in 5. And then finally, the maximum amount in that account is capped by the state. So if I'm using Illinois plan, the maximum is 450,000. That's a pretty lot, right? I'm probably not going to fund that because there is a payback on these accounts. So 2 things to be aware of using an ABLE. One, that if you have more than 100,000 in it, the SSI can be suspended, not canceled, just suspended. So you keep it below 100 while your child's on SSI. And 2, when your child passes away, if there's money in their ABLE, the state can get reimbursement for Medicaid spent from the time the account was set up. That is not a reason not to use it. It is a great tool. The whole class just on why the ABLE account is so useful. It's not really appropriate now because we don't have that much time, but I want you to be aware of it. And you can get a lot of information from that on our website. The other things you should know is the maximum amount is now 15. That's tied to the gifting amount that we could do. If the gifting amount from the IRS goes up, that'll go up. If we have set up a 529 for our child, we can roll 529 money into the ABLE tax-free. So that's an important thing. Sometimes we set up 529s early on, and then later on we find the child is not going to be using it for college. We can roll it into an ABLE account. You get a saver's credit for retirement savings if you put money in. And then finally, if the child can work, they can also put an additional 12,000 of their earnings in. So we do have some disabled children who work and are making some money, and they can also fund it over and above the 15. Okay, so those are the basic rules. I just wanted to give you a framework that's another tool you can use. And the special needs trust, having language in it to be able to fund the ABLE for special uses is really important. So the ABLE account is kind of today dollars, and the special needs trust is big dollars that funds it. Okay. Okay, I want to talk about 2 more things. We have not much time left. I want to leave some time for questions. I see there's a question, so I'm going to make sure I cover it. Is there an issue with military retirement being passed down to a special needs child? Glad you asked that. We covered it a little bit yesterday. Military retirement needs to be payable to a special needs trust. So, and it typically pensions can be payable to a third party special needs trust. So not just military pensions, but state teaching pensions, FERS, a lot of other pensions can be payable to a child with special needs. Okay. And therefore, because there's this extra amount, if it goes to the child, they're going to lose their benefits. So those retirement pensions, the military ones typically have language that says if the child has special needs, it could be that money can be passed on to a third party special needs trust. Right? A lot of rules around those, and they're changing them always. I've just recently had a teacher's retirement pension said you could do that, but now they said if you're not claiming the child's a dependent, you can't get that benefit. So read the pension rules and stay up with them, because we're leaving the language in just in case they change the rules back. But if the child goes live residentially, most of the time you can't claim him as a dependent anymore, and you lose that military pension. So be careful. All right. So you get all this stuff. I'm going to cover this really quickly. You did all this stuff. You've got the benefits, and you've got the plan done, and you've got the legal documents. And then something happens to you, and I become your child's trustee or guardian. What do I know? You think I know a lot. I'm as, but do you? Do I really know what you know? Absolutely not. It's impossible for me to know what's in your head. So it is really important that all that stuff that's in your head somehow gets to those people. So what do you want them to know about if something happens to you? Where should your child live? All the little things, right? If they're in school, do the siblings or do your siblings know about, have they ever gone to an IEP? Okay. Have they done that or have they not? So we assume that other people will step in and know, but we have so much information. If your child does have the ability to ever work, what would that look like? We have struggled through medical care. We have found the right doctors. We have found the right medicines. What I'm asking is you should be writing down what is the medical care that your child's getting, and what are the doctors you never want to see, and what medicine didn't work. Somebody else has to know that. They have to have the history. You might have changed 3 doctors. Okay. What about social life? What is their social life? Might not be the same as a typical child. What are the routines? We work so hard at creating safety around our child and a full life. How do we make that continue? All right. On our website, we have something called My Special Life. You can put pictures in, you can put history in. We have figured every topic out you'd be documenting. You can pass on the usernames and passwords. You can print this out as a book. I don't care how you do it, but you need to leave this information behind, because a person who's going to step up into your job has to have an operating manual. They have to know what to do. And don't assume that your sisters, your brothers, or the siblings are going to know it in the future. Tell family about it. All right. I will leave you with one last thought. Been hesitating to stop clearing child on taxes, and she turns 22 this year. I'm going to come back to this question. I want to get through this, and then I will come back to this question if you don't mind. I just want to make sure, because I will stay on an answer. Who's your dream team? Your child's in the middle, and your family surrounds them. But when I start thinking about who's the team of people, I've been really active in doing this for families now, because I could be a coach, or somebody can be a coach, and the guardians and trusts need to be coached. Okay. You don't assume they're going to, and all these things they need to be coached on. They need to be coached on living support in the medical team. They need to be coached on attorneys and service providers and the professionals you're going to use, and faith, and all of this. I mean, I just have categories and categories of things. This is where you get your peace of mind. Identifying and starting to document all the people that don't leave the guardians and trustees in a place where they don't have what they need. Just start documenting everything you can, and it doesn't happen overnight. Just start a little bit. Just start with the first thing you want them to know. It'll grow over time. Okay. It's just a lot of different things. Who are the support groups? About this organization. If something happens to you, who will know about this organization? Right. So we have a little worksheet which we'll include in some things that we send out. But this is just a way to say, who's my dream team captain? Who are the categories? Who are the people? What do I want them to know? And just start communicating. All right. I'm going to go back to that question. But there was that one question that somebody asked. So the question was, I've been hesitating to stop declaring my child on my taxes, and she turns 22 this year and lives at home. When do we take the plunge and stop claiming her to get higher SSI and claim her contribution to home as income? Claiming your child's a dependent on your tax return isn't as beneficial as it used to be, because you don't really claim dependents anymore on our tax return in the same way. But you can, if you still want to claim them as your tax return, you instead, you can say that they're paying, you can say that they're paying their fair share instead. So they're paying their fair share of the expenses, just expenses. There's a whole lot of information on that. And if you want to email me, I can email you about some more information about that because it's a bigger topic. Okay. I know it's hard to stop clearing that and taking the SSI, but I always take people, this is what I tell people. If you're want to get the higher SSI amount for your child someday, do it now, because otherwise you're leaving that job to someone else, right? And we're, as parents, it's our job to do the heavy lifting. It's our job to do all that stuff and learning about this and how to do that. And if your child, if you are claiming your child's rent on your tax return and things like that, it's not going to cost you more taxes. It's how you file that. If you have a good accountant and you understand that you can file expenses against that rent you're taking, it's not going to hurt you. Okay. All right. That was kind of a quick answer. Okay. One last thing I'll leave you with. If there's any more questions, I will answer them. I hope everybody learned one thing. That was my goal. And if you want to email me the one thing you said you'll do, that would be great because I will hold you accountable. And I will give you quickly, you can get to us info@protectedtomorrows.com or directly to me. It's M Ehlert, MEHLERT @protectedtomorrows.com. We help people all over the country. We're always happy to help. So thank you. And if there's any more questions, I'm glad to answer them. I know we are running out of time.
I got one question. I just don't seem to want to know how to type. So,
okay.
So we have a child that we didn't do a 529 plan because we never thought he was going to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And now the ABLE Act, it sounded like today that they're able to take, the state is able to take money back.
Yeah.
So is it worth funding? And is there a catch-up period to this? Because Connecticut, where I am, it's about 2015 that it was passed. So it's about 6 years ago.
There's no catch-up. So you can
Why
start
would I
now.
put money in there though? Why would I do that?
You open an account. So there's state programs. So you could decide to use your own state, another state. Like Florida only allows Florida residents. I don't know what your state is. Illinois allows any state. So if you your own state has one, sometimes you get a deduction, just like a 529, you get a credit on your tax return. So you open them online. You can go to ablenrc.org and it compares all the states. I can send that out to you. They're going to be distributed to everybody. But there's a website that compares all the ABLEs to determine the best one to use, but they're all online signups. You don't go anywhere to open the account. It's online, and then you're connected to your bank account and you can fund it that way.
Why would I do it at this point? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
How would you do it? What is that?
Why would I do it?
Oh, why would you do it? The reason is because one of the reasons we use them often is because if your child can only have $2,000 in their account and somebody wants to give a gift to them, you can have it go to the ABLE. If your child's account, let's say they got their disability check, but then all of a sudden it builds up and it gets close to 2,000, you can move the money over to the ABLE account. Okay, so it's keeping your child's account below the 2,000. It allows people also to gift and not disqualify them. Then you can use it. So you can have the money go in there. I wouldn't be so fearful. I'd be more fearful of losing the benefits because there's too much money in my child's name. So I would use that as a backup. That's why I would open it. I would say, I got this account, I'm going to put $200 in it. And then whenever I have into a problem, then I'm going to have too much money in my child's name, or grandma wants a gift, or somebody wants to give birthday gifts and they want to help you, I would have it go to the ABLE. Now, I'd watch the ABLE so it doesn't get too big. Okay, so if somebody wanted to give a really big gift, I would open up an account in the name of the Special Needs Trust. But it's a way to stay out of trouble, I call it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I hope that helps.
All right, well, we got to go back unless there's no other questions. Obviously,
say there's one more question. Oh, that's just a comment.
Could you give us your email again?
Oh, sure. It's MEHLERT, Ehlert @protectedtomorrows.com.
Okay, thank you.
One last comment. Will the 2,000 asset limit ever be changed? It's ridiculously low. I agree. That's why the ABLE account came about. We're working on having the ABLE payback removed. So Most states are saying the states won't go after it, only the feds are going after it. So like in Illinois, if I'm getting some Medicaid dollars from the regular Medicaid program, Illinois won't go after those, but they will go after Medicaid waiver dollars because those come from the feds. There is lots of us working on getting that payback removed because it makes no sense. Okay. Somebody says, if I have an ABLE in Virginia and I live in Washington, as they did not have one, should I leave it there or move it to my state? I would again compare the two plans and see what they look like. If you have one in your state and you get a tax credit for contributing to it, you might consider that. But I also look at what are the fees, what are the investment choices, and there's a state by state comparison that you can look at under the National Disability Institute created this thing called the ABLE Network, and that's where it'll be. Okay.
All right,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye, Mary.
Okay. Email me questions if you have any other questions that we didn't cover. Thank you.